How many of you live in the neighborhood? Oh, great. I want to talk to you today because I'm an architect and I love old buildings, and the city doesn't, unfortunately. The city likes to knock old buildings down. So when we walk up Shotwell Street, Ted's going to do most of the talking. That's just his nature. And if anybody has any questions about how old is that building, or when was that building constructed, I've got too much data here. One down that hadn't been stuccoed or added to with metal asbestos shingles turns out to be from 1868. That's consistent with the ages of the houses in the neighborhood here. He's showing a snow picture. This was actually a Chronicle photograph, although this one comes from the San Francisco Public Library's history room. It shows snow on Shotwell Street, and the person who took the photograph was standing down the street where that palm tree is on the opposite side.
There's 2 snow pictures, right? Do you know where the second one was taken from?
The second one, he just crossed the street and somehow got up in somebody's house and looked down.
Okay.
I think I have that one too.
What year was that taken?
This is February 5th, 1887. So this house is from 1868. 1870, the one next door. 3 of them that have cornices that stick out from their front walls. Those 3 are from the mid-1870s. So by the time the snow fell, these houses had all been here for at least 10 or 20 years. So you can see the retaining walls in the front of everyone's yard. You can see some of the wrought iron fencing. You can see gas lamps that lit the street at night. So this was the streetcar suburb. Horse car, later a railroad car, ran down Howard Street, and people from the East Coast moved here, and they expected this. They expected organized blocks. They expected a nicely composed landscape, and Shotwell Street is really a beautiful example of that. You can see on this street, unlike others, there's a front yard setback. The houses are not built out to the line, and why do you think that might be? They all have a front stair. How could you get up the front stair if your building was right on the property line? So just by a function of the space required for the stair, gave the Victorian era housing nice front yards. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to come to Shotwell today, because it combined my love of older buildings with Ted's love of trees, urban street trees.
So what sort of plantings are there in 1880s?
There are no street trees, you're right about that, but there are trees in the yards. Nobody had air conditioning back in the 1800s. When you laid out a city, one of the first things you did was to make room for the shade trees. This is one of the few streets that had enough room and a width of the sidewalk to do that. But in San Francisco, they discovered they didn't need shade trees because they didn't need shade. Now this is a melaleuca. It's a paper bark tree. You get a fire running up the watercourse, it would char the bark on these things. But after they had a good season of growth, then the new growth would be white. Melaleuca means black-white. So the trunks of the trees were black and white striped. They're a big weed in the Everglades. Since these reproduce when there's a flood, but the Everglades are always flooded. So it's a good place for these. This can get about 35, 40 feet, but you can keep it, as they're doing, they have to keep it under. There's 2 olive trees, hopefully of the low fruit kind. Here's another unusual tree from California. Has 1 bloom on it right now. This was introduced by General Fremont when he came to California to separate California from Mexico. How many politician wannabes are good botanists? It's got these great big flowers. It's in the same family as coffee. This one fluttering in front of us, it looks pretty good right now. It's got a whole flush of new leaves from all of that nice weather we had a month ago. If you look at the oldest leaves, you'll see they're all spotted. They're turning various colors, and they've got a lot of black spots. Called a shot hole disease. It's a leaf spot disease. And unfortunately, every tree here, just about every tree has it.
663.
661, 663 was 1878.
667, 1885, 671, 1899.
Both of those are in this snow photo. Both are upset that the city wants them to do certain things with their building because it's historic. when you think about it, they're not our houses. They weren't built by us, although we pay for them dearly. We probably will not outlive the house itself. These houses, when they were built with some of the best wood that was available. Old growth redwood. Yes, the northern forest, old growth redwood and the Douglas fir that was used. That wood, if you keep it dry, and these houses can last 400 or 500, even more. All right, so we're going to turn around and we're going to walk up Shotwell to 23rd. Remember that this suburb was here because it was flat from downtown, so the railroads came out on the flatlands first. This area also had good farmland. It was deep, flat, accumulated soils. It also had some of the nicest weather in the city. You were protected by the hills of Twin Peaks and Mount Davidson and Sutro from the fog. Gentleman on the sidewalk who's lost a skinny black dog who jumped out of his... From the east, they brought the trees with them. In Sacramento, you'll see a wonderful park up there where people had lost relatives. When they came west, many of them went to those battlefields and dug up saplings and brought them west with them, and they planted them around that state house. These two trees over here with the white bark and adjacent, these are the silver birch tree of Europe. They grow from Europe all the way across Siberia. They expect summer rains. It's not a drought-tolerant tree at all. Buildings here are very different than the four buildings that we saw coming in from the corner. These are older. Doug asked me, what's that building back there? Why is it so close? It says on here it's the stables for the house. Cars didn't come along for another, if this is 1868, another 40 years. Let's notice the brick circle in the middle of the intersection. And let's see how many people know what the brick circle is.
It's a cistern. Water.
The gentleman in the blue jacket, we need to get out of the intersection, please. Out of the intersection, please. When the city's ability to fight the fire after the earthquake resulted in the rebuilding, they put cisterns in various places throughout the city. And they're usually defined by these brick circles that can still be seen. So somewhere down below this asphalt there is a big, probably now hollow cistern, or maybe it's been filled in with sand. 1890, the one we're looking at is from 1890. And then 806 has an older date of 1868.
I happened to mention that I lived on Shotwell Street, and his friend said, what's the address? And I told her, she says, well, I used to own that building from 1969 to 1979. And there's a guy around here that misplaced his dog, and he used to own this building too. Not only that, I've spoken with a great-great-grandson of the man who built this building, and he passed away in 1869, and his widow continued to live here until 1918, and she ran a rental. So in 1922, it was cut up into 4 units. They actually didn't really build any walls except for bathrooms, and even the 2 lower units were only separated by putting a single nail through a single door. There's some boxes, and you can actually see up through the crack. On the second floor, there's a little thing that sticks out into the 6 inches of airway, and what those are, screen-backed cabinets that you could put your milk in, and there's 4 of those for the various units. Thank you very much. And it's the oldest one we've seen yet today. The building itself was a hardware store, and it was built on an old racetrack. 2 race courses, the Union Race Course and the Pioneer Race Course. There you go. How convenient. Which is down around 24th or perhaps even further down. And I drew a yellow line on this map to indicate where Shotwell Street is. When the railroad was put from San Francisco to San Jose, they brought the railroad down east of Folsom Street and used the big pieces of land for the racetrack to take it away from Bernal Hill. And the railroads were able to deal with only 2 landholders. See the yard with the long fence? That was where the wood was stored.
You can't be a hardware store and sell lumber unless you've got a big yard. It's indicative of the simple kind of building that would have been done before the Victorian era.